Roads play an absolutely crucial role in Satisfactory, whether that's for vehicular purposes, pioneer transport, or even hiding your conveyor belts. Today, I'll be showing you how to make the perfect roads in Satisfactory 1.0. If you enjoy these tutorial videos, I have got a bunch more available on my channel. Right before we get into it, a massive thank you to everyone that has subscribed to the channel in the last 24 hours. The support has been absolutely remarkable. But without further ado, let's just dive straight into the video. Now, when it comes to roads, this is as basic as it gets. You've got trucks or tractors going one way, then coming back on the other with a small barrier in between, just so they don't accidentally crash into one another. In regards of the looks, again, basic, and pillars, again, rather basic as well. There's nothing unique about this, but in regards of efficiency, it's not that bad. But obviously, it can be so much better. So I would call this a basic Satisfactory road. But, of course, we're not here for basic roads, we're here for perfect roads. So let's go into our second area over here, which I would call more of like a mediocre or stage 2 sort of road. So, up here is where you'll have room for all your tractors and your trucks. But this road that I've designed isn't actually meant to be a road, it's used for something else, which I'll show you in the next sector in just a little bit. But underneath here, I do want to spend a bit of time talking about this. When you build your roads, you might have buildings on this side, buildings on that side, or maybe you just got a nice view that you'd quite like to walk next to one day. So, if you were to build these pathways down here, of course it looks nice, especially when you compare it to that first basic road that we had earlier on. And it also functions better as well with the hypertubes out here. So this definitely looks and works much better than our previous design, but let's say you would like some verticality along with this project. So, all you have to do is just select a vertical blueprint. Of course, you'd have to make this yourself, but I'll show you my model and I'll show you basically how to remake it. I've called it Starter Train Ramp 1. And the way that you have to attach this onto this straight build is by selecting one of these foundations right here and then lining it so it roughly snaps. We can do about there. You can then build it down and then something like this. You'll then reselect your blueprint, go back down again to where it says Starter Train Ramp 1. And you then have to make sure it's aligned to the top, which it should be about here. And we know that because we can see that these two railings are indeed aligned just like that, and everything here should be aligned. You can have a quick look around to make sure everything is good. Plop that down and you should be all set. Now, some of you might have noticed that with this blueprint, we've actually had one foundation extra onto the right. And when it comes to our left foundation, we've sort of half done it. And there's actually a very logical reason for this. Let me quickly show you. And that is because, as we can see, this actually fits together perfectly. I've created a starter ramp, a middle ramp, which is currently what you see, and an end ramp, which is the exact same as this, but rather than having the singular flat foundation here, it's up here instead, which again makes the puzzle pieces fit together a bit better, because that's what blueprints really are in Satisfactory. A lot of it is just a puzzle and trying to fit all the pieces together, and this does work. And we know it works because, as we can see here, the foundations line up, the barriers line up, and everything here lines up as well. When we go ahead and place that down, everything gets built and we can double check everything is fine. The only thing you will actually notice is that this railing here in the middle won't actually copy and paste. Because for whatever reason on the blueprint designer, sometimes you can't have railings at like a weird angle. It just doesn't work, which is kind of annoying, but it's quite easy just to manually place it, then just select the color you want, and there you go. And of course, the hypertubes can connect as well. So this is okay. I don't mind making this that much, but I wouldn't say that this is the perfect road design. So let me show you what I actually think is the perfect road design. Oh, that's odd. There's nothing here. That's because I want to build it with you to show exactly why I've done what I've done. And also to show you a bit of the method behind the madness as well, because this does get kind of crazy, so stick along with it. First change you'll notice is, see where the roads were before? Yes, this is actually meant for trains. Hence why the road was so thin there for the truck, is because, again, I use this mostly for trains, but in a desperate situation, I wouldn't mind just ripping out the railway and then just adding in the truck, or just the regular road. And the reason as to why I've got the railway like this rather than extending it to the edge of the blueprint is for a rather logical reason. If I was to select my blueprint right now and then scroll down to the train ramp, which is the main blueprint I use for this, is so I can very easily connect the blueprint and the railways like that. Because in case you didn't know, you can't connect railway blueprints with each other. So if I was to save this as Railway 1, just save that in there, then get our blueprints, and it will snap onto each other, which is nice, just like that. We'll get our blueprint, and let's also place down a locomotive. And one thing which you're about to see is the train goes, it goes, it goes, it goes, and then it stops. That's because the railway which we saved in the blueprint ends here, so the train cannot cross over into another blueprint. So the reason why I do this is so that the train can cross over, and it's very easy to connect from one to another. And it does also give you a good chance to have multiple crossings in between these tracks as well, which we will be using later on. So let's continue this out a little bit further. Let's then select our train stand to make sure that these pillars aren't just randomly floating. Connect the railway together, and essentially that is our train logistics all sorted out. Of course, with verticality, use the exact same blueprint that I just showed you in our last tutorial. Right, so what we've done here is we've designed a road without a road. So I say we actually add the road elements into this road. So let's start off by doing that. Let's go into blueprints, and then let's scroll down to where it should say ramp 5. Now ramp 5 is extremely simple, but essentially this is our main road for the road. Now be cautious with this, as I'll show you the design in just a second. This doesn't exactly snap on because of this barrier that we have from the last blueprint, and of course because of this little steel frame as well. I think it's called a coated steel frame. So you do have to nudge it by 1 over, but then after you do that, the rest should snap on perfectly, as long as you're aiming to the last road blueprint that you've placed down, rather than here, because as you can see, again, this will jut out by 1, and you don't want that because that's not correct. Same thing here with the other side, make sure to nudge it 1 closer to this main blueprint itself. And already, just by adding that, look how much better this thing is. And of course, as you can most likely expect, this is perfectly fine for trucks. They might struggle to keep in 1 lane, but it should be fine. They can definitely be in 2. Even if you're a bad driver like myself, you can definitely still stick in your lane. And of course, the trucks can either go like left or they can go right, depending if you have right or left-hand traffic on your save. But I do recommend sticking to either left or right. Don't try and like switch it up halfway through, because you might mess with traffic. The last thing you want is some tractor coming down this road just to get run over by a truck. So what if I want to go up with my roads? We know what it looks like with the train track, but have I got a solution to the roads? And the answer is, of course, or I wouldn't be making this video. So let's start off by removing a couple of these blueprints, placing down a couple of these ramps, which is lined up correctly. Now, a slight issue with this is that the ramps on the left and right side both have to be slightly different because of the way that I've designed this thing. But that's not really much of an issue. Essentially, you just have to create the exact same blueprint, but swap over the railings so that the railing's on one side rather than the other. And again, I will show you that. As you can see, we've gone for some very, very basic designs, but again, it still works. The ramp is functional, and of course, in regards of efficiency, everything should still be completely fine with the trains and now with the roads. Before we get on to designing corners and of course the T-sections, which will be rather important in this construction, there is also one other blueprint you can try and add, and this is especially for those who want to try and transport power across their world. I've called it Ramp 5 with Power Pool, but of course, name the blueprint whatever you want. I've called this very, very silly names. Like, don't do what I've done. Call it something that's probably easily rememberable. So what I'm going to do here is rotate this thing around like so, until it snaps onto here. Then what I do is wait for the thing to load in. That's probably some good advice. You then go over to Power. You select your Power Tower or just random Power Tower. It's up to you. And then I like to place this thing like so. Make sure it's not overlapping on that side, that's good. Not overlapping on this side as well, it's in the middle. And then very simply after placing that, you just hook it up with wire onto the next power line, which will be somewhere down there, of course connected to the road. And then this would then be connected somewhere over here, and then somewhere over there, then, you know, etc, etc. So if you do want to transport power, And if you like the way it looks next to your road, which honestly I quite like it, I think it adds more of an industrial sort of look, then make sure you do that. Hopefully your roads will end up looking quite busy. But now let's talk a little bit more about T-junctions and cross-sections. And here we have it. This is my perfect intersection in Satisfactory. I absolutely love this thing. I'm super happy that we managed to make it. And as you can see, in fact, this is another example of the power poles connecting to each other. I think it looks decent, even after a bit of vertical lift there as well. So, most importantly, this junction is what we're here to talk about. I have got some signage. The signage is extremely easy to make. All I've done is I've got a couple of these painted beams, a couple of these basic walls, a sign, another couple signs. Really, that's it. I did add some lights underneath here because when I turn on lumen, it looked pretty nice. But regarding the train tracks and the roads, it's still the exact same layout as what we had before, except I have changed around the railings a little bit, but that's just for decoration purposes to do what best suits you. When it comes to this intersection right here, we have got our first off-ramp here on the left, and that shouldn't be there. No one saw that. But when you go over here to the left, you have got this first little off-ramp. From here, you then, again, continue round to the left, and you continue going straight. Simple as that. You don't need to cross any sort of traffic whatsoever. And of course, if you would like to go straight on this road, you can still go straight. But when I'll be driving the vehicles, I'll make sure to keep them over here to the right, just in case another vehicle does come off here, and continue in that sort of direction. However, let's say you are coming from this side, you have got some signs here as well. This sign basically says, don't crash. I'll try not to, but I probably will. And I don't really recommend it for U-turns, and I don't see a reason as to why I should do a U-turn. But if, for whatever reason, you think that your vehicles might need to do a U-turn, what I recommend adding is something like this. This is what it will end up looking like instead. So, if a vehicle does need to do a U-turn, it can do it here. Because if it was to do it here, and let's say this vehicle here stops, and then there's a vehicle right behind it, that means that this entire main road is now suddenly at a standstill, because you've got trucks backed up over here. The only thing that will continue to run is the trains, which is great, but I've actually got a slightly better design of the railroads, which will show you in just a minute. But now I think it's time to show you guys my perfect Satisfactory roads, which incorporates everything that we've seen so far, plus some other stuff, which is definitely over the top, but it's perfect for me. Let me show you. Here it is. We've got our two train tracks, which I showed you guys earlier on. We then have, of course, our roads, 2 lanes going away from us and 2 coming back towards. Underneath here, we then have enough room for about 78 conveyor belts. So in case you are in desperate need of a bunch of conveyor belts in your save, this is the best place to use them, because again, you can fit so much stuff in here, as long as it has proper lighting, because if it doesn't, this place looks a bit creepy. But with proper lighting, not too bad. And then underneath that, we then have room for another set of rails. This is because this is our little underground system. So, and just in case there's too many trains going above, or in case we want more things going, again, away from us or towards us, I have designed an entire underground network just for this project. And underneath that, you have extra storage. This could be used for hypertubes if you really want them, more conveyor belts, or whatever you like. And underneath that, we have got an adjustments layer. This is basically here just in case of terrain, because as you can see, the terrain's not entirely flat, and because this thing is rather tall, I don't want this thing to be clipping into the ground, which will slow down productivity and look a bit crap. So here is this angle of it, but of course there is a lot more. Showing you guys this angle now, this is the exterior. It's nothing special, it's just a fairly basic structure really. Also ignore this hypertube cannon, I don't know if this video is out yet, and if it's not out yet, then here's a massive spoiler for that. But essentially, consider this like the city floor. This is where we'll be building our skyscrapers and factories from this foundation. But how do you get to the underground? Well, you might just be able to see it over here. I have added yet again another T-junction, which I have used for hyperrails now, but let's pretend that's not there. Where from here, from the train at least, you can go underground until you get to this part right here. This is not fully complete obviously, but it's to show you roughly what's to be expected. I've also designed a rather basic entrance into this factory, but I built it with lumen turned off, so it's a little bit dark, and then the wall just ends here. In fact, what's even on the... I generally don't even know what's on the other side of this thing. It is... Ooh, an actual underground bit. Okay, this is a bit scary, though. So I've considered that the main part of the road, but of course I can't end today's video without showing you guys the road corners, which I promised you about an hour ago, so let's go see that. And here it is. It's extremely basic, but it's quite nice, and it works exactly the way you'd probably expect it to work. The hypertubes and the pathways end here. So if a player would like to come back around on themselves, they always can, or if they like to continue their adventure wherever it is they're going, they can always just come up here, then jump into the hypertube. You can in fact do that. Now, above here, we've got the train area, and again, it's just a very, very simple curve. You can make the curve slightly better if you so wish, but this still functions and it's completely fine. This road here on the left just does a nice sharp turn, whereas the road over here has a slightly more angled turn as well. Again, I think it just looks slightly better than having an exact 90-degree angle, and the reason why I've done that over here though is so that I can add this, which again is our power tower. But before we go, a massive thank you to our members Mau Mau, Skull and Hattie, Lo, Litormal, Heroes Rising, Cutthroat Zoo, Yamikel, and Tio Rico. £2.99 per month, you get access to badges, emotes, and member-only rewards and features here on the channel. It is the best way to support my work, so thank you. Of course, a massive thank you for watching. Click here or here to see more of my content, and subscribe if Satisfactory is the game for you. Have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, Godspeed.